And another key one, again, is service level agreements. Today, if you have been looking around to solutions in cloud computing, you might have noticed that many companies are a bit fuzzy when they want to negotiate service level agreements. Google is not giving any. Amazon is giving you very high service level agreements, but they point out immediately that if they don't make them, that the penalty they will pay will be very limited. So then what's the value? So that's something you certainly will want to watch. Now, key is I always try to explain that cloud computing should not be a strategy in itself. It should not be one of the IT strategies to say, well, I will implement cloud computing. Key is, of course, first of all, as mentioned on the left, and it's really the first thing that should be done when you start considering cloud computing, is understand where does the business wants to go to, how can the IT support this strategic direction, and therefore, if I want to execute the defined IT strategy, how can cloud computing help to facilitate this execution? How can some of the projects which I need to do be done quicker, more easily, cheaper, and with more agility? And that's how you should consider cloud computing to help implementation of the IT strategy to support the business. Once that is done, then it will become more easily to know, well, okay, which workloads, whether it's email or collaboration or ERP system, to really understand which workloads, as we call them, are key or core to your business and differentiating. And therefore, you might decide to say, well, I keep those internally personalized to my company and really do what they need to do. Or which workloads, like email, they are less critical, not so differentiating to competition, and therefore, I don't care to standardize them and put them in a public cloud environment. So once that is clear, then you can really start to deploy cloud computing in an efficient way and with a sound business case. As I mentioned, we do not want to just say that you have to put everything in cloud computing and that life will become beautiful. You should well consider when it makes sense and when it does not make sense. And in many cases today, it might still not make sense. And we will also be very honest on that you will never be able to build a business case when your data is very sensitive, when you have an application which is very customized, when the process is very complex. That's not the kind of environment that you want to move to cloud computing. And very especially, you will not get the benefits or not the financial benefits. For those things which today in your organization are standardized or not differentiating, well, why would you not move them to cloud computing, get the pay-as-you-use formula, get the agility? So it should be a big improvement. Once you have made this, there are a lot of flavors of cloud computing. And maybe just to set the record straight, so there's not cloud computing or move things to cloud computing. Cloud computing, as nice as the word is, it's still about data center, servers, network, and storage, whether it's now in your traditional way of doing things or whether it's in this name of cloud computing. But in some location, you still need the black boxes to run your applications on. The difference is if you choose for the private cloud, it means that you still work with a CapEx model, buy everything, do things in-house, but you will increase the way you can still customize things. And you will get the advantage of having the fully automated process within your IT environment so that the IT people, again, can spend more focus and budget on the business intelligence part rather than updating an operating system of a server. On the other hand, you still have the full public cloud, which means that the servers and the data center are actually located in a data center which is not managed by yourself, by a service provider, of course, like IBM, and where the resources of the data center are shared amongst many customers. And then you actually have all kinds of flavors in between. And today, the most adopted one is what we call actually the shared cloud. And not to confuse it too much, it means that we will use shared resources where it is not making a difference for your quality of service, but we will still allow you to get something tailored, and especially in terms of security. For example, to get your dedicated line from your company to that cloud service data center to make sure we can really provide you high SLAs and high security. Key again, cloud computing is not just about the activation of a server remotely through a browser. It's a full automation of the process within your organization. So unless you really think how today are you managing IT budgets, How is the process being done of approvals? How do you allow people to get a new desktop or activate a new server? It will be difficult to be efficient in your deployment of cloud computing, because the purpose is really that you do not need people within your IT organization to deploy IT resources. The purpose is to give access, give ability to your business people. For example, if new people arrive in your company, they log on the internet, they get an agreement that they exist within your company, and within 1 hour, they get a virtual desktop which they can access with all the right applications, with all the right accesses, etc. So it's really to think about the full process line of approvals, activation, and budgets. It's clear that if you want to do that, you really need to think, well, okay, how will the IT organization still properly manage this if business people can just go ahead and activate stuff, deactivate stuff? That's why in cloud computing, 2 other aspects which are really key is monitoring, so you can see what's happening, who is doing what the right things happening. And the advantage of that is, of course, once you have full visibility on what's happening, you can really discuss with the business side also on budgets, I mean. So you can charge them back to really make sure that the people who are consuming the IT resources also get charged for it, even if it's internally, so you can make sure that you have a good understanding on the return of investment on business projects. Security, that's another big hype, I believe. Security, people consider that if I no longer know where the things are, it cannot be secure. And of course, people will consider, well, if I have my Gmail and if Google goes down, I cannot do anything, so there's a security risk. If I put my pictures on Picasa and they go down, what will I do? Am I sure that no one else can see them? And that's the kind of references people will use to say, well, there might be a security concern. Now, it's clear that security is not just about where is my data and who has access to it, because you need a full framework to understand who will be getting access and how are you managing that today, because it can be as much risk that you have today versus when you are using cloud computing. The customers I have seen getting trouble with data which was flowing out of the company in an unauthorized way, it never had to do with the fact how their IT was organized or how they were having their processes. It was simply because of people and human error. And as I mentioned before, cloud computing is also about the automation of processes. And the less human intervention, most likely the less errors you can get in who should be on a certain access list of certain data. Clearly, you need to know where data is. It's not because it's cloud computing, it should be anywhere. You need to know where it is, and you should be able to define where your data is, whether it remains in your company, whether it remains in the country for legal reasons, whether it remains within Europe because of accessibility for users, or any other reason. And that clearly also needs to be defined. And as in the current traditional way, you will need to look at how secure is your network, do I need a VPN, what's happening with your security of applications, and basically also the servers. Just to give you some examples, and actually we have the example of PayPal, but also in Benelux, we have a customer who chose for an IBM solution actually to increase security. So they're a PayPal-like company where the people on the phone, so the call center people, were having desktops and were actually having all the very confidential data on their desktops, like credit card numbers, addresses, personal information, which clearly they did not lie, because you can put a USB card and take everything with you. Therefore, they actually decided to move to a desktop in the cloud to make sure that all the information is managed centrally and that the people in the call center could only visualize information on the screen, but could no longer get it on their desktop and certainly not download it on a USB key. So that's an example where actually, thanks to cloud computing, they are increasing the security level. If you would still have some doubts about security, do know that US Air Force is also asking IBM to implement a cloud solution. So I would expect if they implement a cloud solution, they will also want to make sure it's very secure. Maybe one other example, it's the Bank of Tokyo. When there was the Mexican flu, they were actually scared that they would have a huge business issue if people would no longer be able to go to the office. And that was their reason to make sure that the 34,000 people or employees they have would be able to work through a virtual desktop from home or any other location. So these are really business reasons why people are implementing cloud solutions. And that was my presentation, so I think we will have some more interesting discussions afterwards, and certainly looking forward to it. Thank you.
And of course, this has all been about extreme flexibility, because initially, of course, the presentation was planned slightly later, and so we're not going to make it very long because they're waiting with the food. But if there are any urgent questions, very, very briefly, for Mr. Requin, we'll come back to many of the points that he mentioned, but you might want to react to some of what you've heard. If not, I'll just take it that that means we are ready for food right now. Okay, let's do that, and then we'll come back to discussion in a minute. Thank you very much. Zoals de hoge priester van de schrandere analyse en van het gezond verstand en van de nabijheid met de realiteit van de ondernemingen, meneer Soete het ons heeft gezegd bij de inleiding van dit evenement, is er sinds het eerste CEO-CIO-seminarie en nu een hele evolutie geweest in die dialoog. Et cette évolution dans ce dialogue entre ces deux mondes qui sont devenus un monde, on va l'illustrer ici aujourd'hui. J'appelle au podium messieurs Jean-Stéphane, qui est évidemment le CEO de GlaxoSmithKline, Daniel Lebeau. Nous allons voir les noms à l'écran, m'a-t-on dit. Et nous voyons aussi monsieur Benoît Chen, CEO de Mobistar, que j'appelle volontiers au podium. Hendrik Forstier, Chief Business Transformation Officer, évidemment Jean-Stéphane. Et alors, nous allons vous proposer de rester en couple. Alors, installez-vous et, comme on dit en anglais, handsome couples, and today is a little bit about a love story and about how to make the relationship work. Et nous savons tous que pour faire fonctionner l'amour, il faut y travailler tous les jours. Qu'est-ce qui est important en amour pour vous et par extension? Allez-y, Philippe Destet.
L'honnêteté.
L'honnêteté, très important. On va commencer par là. Monsieur Stéphane, quand on regarde l'environnement dans lequel une entreprise opère, il faut être lucide.